Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Dynasty Dudes Hangout with my friend Russell Clay, and we have a special guest tonight from Dynasty League Football, George Kritikos. I don't know how to say his name, but I hope that was right.
George Greek yogurt. How we're gonna go about it?
It's all right. Cordell Patterson works fine too.
All right.
Yeah, Carl likes to call you. All right, so we'll dive in right into the news and notes. There's not much going on in the NFL right now. Pretty much the biggest news of the week was Johnny Manziel entering rehab. So do either of you have any strong thoughts on does this help his Dynasty value that he's showing that he needs to turn his life around, or is this just a spiral downhill? What do we think of Johnny Manziel going to rehab and his Dynasty value as a result?
I question how much of an effect this is going to have because he's voluntarily going. Usually the only time rehab really works is when, like, people sit you down and have that conversation and then you're forced to go. So we'll see how long he's in there and sort of – I mean, it's pretty much wait and see with him. I think he's worth a shot late round dynasty-wise, but other than that, you're not investing much, so I guess it's wait and see. Other than that, I don't really know that there's much.
Yeah, I guess I'm not super optimistic either, but I mean, it's good that he's getting the help. That's always a positive, but I mean, his play didn't really show anything that suggests that even with the help, he's going to progress as much as you want. So I agree with Russell. Late round, good upside shot, but I don't think he's going to live up to kind of what some people were saying prior to the rookie season.
Yeah, and by late round, I mean like he's going in legitimately like the 20th round now. So it's not much of a risk for a guy that was a first-round pick last year. So
yeah, and one thing kind of coming out of this is people are kind of just like jumping the ship on the Cleveland Browns as an organization. It's just like, you know what, screw it. With Josh Gordon, Johnny Manziel, I don't want any of it. Just all the Browns. I'm not drafting them. And, of course, this leads to huge mistakes. But still, like, people are washing their hands of the Cleveland Brown organization.
Yeah, it's pretty unreal how the tides turned so quickly. It was, like, so optimistic 3 months ago, right? They were in the lead in the NFC North, or AFC North, and it was just, like, good times. I lost an over-under bet for them, and then right after that, they just pile drove into the earth. So that was that.
All right, so like I said, not much news and notes this week. So we've got a special segment that Russell would like to start us off with tonight. So what is it, Russell?
Things that make you say, what? The thing that makes you say what today is Joe Flacco has two brothers. One of them is a starting tight end starting I mean backup. Potentially practice squad. Tight end for the Jaguars. The other one, he just committed to, I believe, one of the Michigans today. And that's a pretty ridiculous family. And who knew? You would have thought with all the Super Bowls and all that stuff that he would have gotten those thrown out there at some point, like Gronk's brothers, but nothing.
He needs to invest in a party bus.
I think that's the next move for that family. We'll see. I'll be keeping close tabs now, for sure.
Is his college brother, is he a quarterback too?
Yeah, he's a quarterback, so...
Oh, so he's definitely elite, without a doubt.
He was actually pretty highly touted from what I could tell, so he might actually be something. Who knows?
Well, so is Snoop Dogg's son, so let's calm down.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So, what do we got here?
All right, so you want to talk about some... Well, free agency is about a month away, and so we at the Dynasty Dudes, we don't procrastinate. We do the opposite of that. I'm not sure what it is. Someone, wordsmith might be able to tell me. But anyways, let's just dive right into free agency. One of the more bigger names in free agency that's likely to move, just because due to cap constrictions, is DeMarco.
Brian Hoyer?
No, I don't even waste time on this hangout with Brian. DeMarco Murray, not much chance Dallas is able to afford him. Is there a landing spot that would be good as far as good for the team, good for him? What are we thinking for DeMarco Murray?
Go ahead, George.
I guess I'll try. I don't know. I think there's a couple of good spots. I could see Atlanta being an interesting situation for him if they were willing to go after a running back. I mean, Devonta Freeman didn't really show too much his rookie year. Even Arizona might consider it, given kind of Andre Ellington's injury history and the fact that he's probably a little bit more of a change of pace. I don't know. I think there's probably 4 or 5 teams where he could be legitimately good option, but I think anything's going to be a small step down for him given how strong that line was and how just kind of good that passing game was on his overall, offensive scheme.
Yeah, I agree, and it'd be interesting because it's kind of like he's at the age where it's kind of hard to sell him at a premium in dynasty leagues. 28-year-old running backs, exactly. He might not even be that old. I don't know what I'm saying. But he's definitely not super young, and he's going into free agency, and he's probably not going to have as good of an offensive line as he did in Dallas. So it's kind of too late to sell because everyone almost assumes that he's gone. But maybe he's a buy once he gets to his new place, and maybe his owners start to panic a little bit. Is that kind of how you see it, Russell, or what are you thinking?
I think he's definitely another wait-and-see type of guy. I mean, there's so much uncertainty. I think he's proven this year he can be a feature back, so you can look at the talent like that. But, depending on all these the rookie influx coming in and sort of the uncertainty of where he's going, he is a feature back, but who knows if he goes to a situation where he ends up not splitting carries, but in a 60-40 split or something like that. So I definitely wait and see. He could end up being a buy low based on his age and stuff. But, I wouldn't be going too heavy in investing in him right now. It's too risky.
He had 393 carries, I think, just during the regular season. So, that's pretty uncharted territory for a running back, and then I don't remember how many in the playoffs, but assuming it got over 400, and I think he's 26 is how old he is. I don't know if he turns 27 before the season, but it's a risk, I think, but he probably has low career miles on him just because of all those injuries. So it's kind of his percentage of runs this year probably makes up a larger chunk than what you see for most people at that age.
Right. So dynasty-wise, he's a really risky proposition right now, but I don't know.
Another guy it's kind of a risky proposition, and he's not on the dock, so don't look. Randall Cobb, there's been much buzz that a lot of people expect him to be back, but he's also one of those guys that it's just in limbo right now. It's like his value is going to be a huge swing if he does move. So it's hard to really investigate a trade or start up right now with him unless you're as confident as a lot of people that he's back in Green Bay.
Again, wait and see.
Yeah.
You just, I think he'll be good either way. I think if he goes somewhere else, he'll end up being overvalued in general because usually when that ADP sort of gets out there early on, people tend to abide by it more than they should. But if he's back in Green Bay, I don't see why he couldn't do what he did this year again in 2015,
Yeah, I think the bigger risk is probably Devontae Adams and to a lesser extent, I guess, Jeff Janis if you want to dig a little bit deeper. Adams could go from being, a guy who, is the third option on that passing game to being potentially a top 15 or 20 receiver if Cobb leaves. And then is maybe scrap if, at least you're not starting him if Cobb decides to return. But he really seems to have more of a potential swing than even Cobb would have if he leaves or stays.
Yeah, I get that. That's very true.
I agree with that. And if you listen to the DLF pod last night, someone had him as their 27th, Devontae Adams as their
Max
27th player. Yeah, and that is just getting into some scary territory for me. If he starts going in that third round, it's just sort of like, where's the reward? Like, what do you have to gain if he blows up this year? If he's already a third round pick, does he move to the second? You know what I mean? So even if he has a good year next year, what's the ceiling of his ADP next year?
Yeah, and it's very similar to our boy Cutterell Patterson. He was being drafted in the third of startups last year, and it's just like, and I was all aboard because I was dumb. But there really wasn't much upside in that play. Now that his ADP has shrunk, maybe there is some upside, but it wasn't at a third, and it's not at a third with Adams. I agree.
Yeah, but it's crazier now because Cobb is technically still there, whereas at least when Patterson was going in the third, you knew he at least had a starting job going into the season.
And he had the potential role to sort of fulfill that ceiling. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, if Cobb stays, which I think people are pretty much, like, casting him out a little bit, and I feel like the Packers are pretty intent on re-signing him. I don't know, but it sounds like they want to get a deal done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much fans actually know, but most of the Packer fans I've talked to are almost positive that Cobb's coming back.
Yeah, so.
All right, so there's some maybe not flyers, the right term, but some interesting running backs. They're also available. Roy Halou, he's had some up and down seasons. Like, I mean, behind Alfred Morris, it's really hard to stick out. But do we have any thoughts on Roy Halou and maybe sort of his dynasty ceiling?
I like him. I think he's performed well in the carries and touches that he's been given. I don't think he has enough of a sample size to really know what he is yet. But if someone gives him an opportunity, I'm not against buying him, you know?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, one team that would be interesting to see him on is New Orleans if they decide not to re-sign Ingram. You know, even though Robinson and Pierre Thomas are still there, I think Pierre Thomas is turning 30, so I don't think he has much time left anyways. But you put him in that type of offense where they feature him as a pass catcher, I mean, I think he could be an RB2 pretty easily in an offense like that.
Yeah, and Russell and I have talked about this a lot, about how, like, this running back class is like a cloud over all running backs. And I kind of see this Roy Halou and some of the other guys as a play of, okay, once they sign, they might maybe get some pub. Maybe then they become a sell because maybe after the draft, their team uses a late round flyer on running back, and Roy Halou's value goes back to virtually nothing.
Right, and I think the theme of this time period is that you just don't overreact to anything. Like, you sort of stay in what you know for now, and you're gonna see people start to overreact. Much like, just assuming second-year players are going to get opportunities before free agency in the draft, and assuming, like, players are going to be the starter next year. And there's really just not much to assume right now, other than the studs and sort of guys that you're sure of their role and are signed already, you know?
Yeah, I think Carlos Hyde is one of those where Frank Gore is a free agent. He's, 31? I think going to be 32. They talked about a little bit on the DLF podcast. And, it's like he's being drafted in startups as a RB1. It's to Devontae Adams, it's a pretty big risk to assume that, he's just going to get that load because, again, you have the rookie class, you have all these free agents. It's tough to say what a new coaching staff thinks about him.
That's exactly where I'm at. And again, I'm not a big fan of Carlos Hyde, but even if I am, to assume before free agency and the draft that he's going to be the starter there and draft him with basically making him your top 3 player on your team, that's just such a risk to me that I would not do that right now. I don't know. Obviously, there are people with differing opinions, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not the biggest Carlos Hyde fan in the world. Just him as a value or even as really a player. Obviously, the situation, it's hard to ignore that it's a good situation if they're still going to be a power running team. And also, I mean, there's rumblings that they're going to use more of the spread next year. I don't believe anything about playbooks in February. It's just a bunch of random buzz.
Yeah, Eric Ollinger and I actually have an article coming out the next Dynasty debate on DLF talking about Carlos Hyde. And I'm the con on that one, or the wet blanket on that fire, whatever you want to call it. So that should be coming out, I think, in the next week.
That'll be really interesting to read because I'm pretty firmly on the con side also, but always looking for differing opinions, I guess, even though I'll probably just ignore them. But
yeah. So one of the guys that we used to consider a stud, and then he's had a couple of mediocre to injured years, C.J. Spiller. Many kind of assume that he's gone from Buffalo with how much the Bills used Fred Jackson even when he was healthy. So with Spiller, how important will landing spot be? Yes, obviously for like market value, it's going to be huge because if he gets a great landing spot, everyone's going to go crazy. If he gets a bad one, everyone's like, oh, CJ Spiller, forget it. But from a real life perspective, how important is it that he goes to a good situation?
I guess I'll jump in. I think it's huge. I think, the Bills showed that he can be misused very easily. That he had that one great season where they were really spreading him out and, kind of really opening up kind of the outside runs for him, and then they just kind of stopped doing that for whatever reason. And so, there are definitely places for him to go where I could see him easily jumping back into it, similar to how Reggie Bush kind of had his, mini career renaissance with the Lions. I mean, there's some teams out there where I could see him fitting pretty well and giving some good value. He's probably a buy low, I think, just based on where he's sitting right now.
Yeah, I'll probably be buying either way. I could see this going two different ways, which is the Reggie Bush comparison that you made, which I really like. Or it's sort of like we have to wonder how much those injuries are starting to build up, And I look at a player that was once borderline elitely talented in Hakeem Nicks, and it's just like, what happened to him, Like, this is clearly a shell of what we saw those years in New York, And I don't.
He's 45 years old.
Yeah, I don't know if obviously if Spiller's at that point, and I don't think he is. I'll be buying him, as I said, but there's a real possibility at this point that the nicks and bruises have sort of built up and his career has been compromised,
Yeah, and of all the free agent running backs, other than Murray, I guess, I think that he's the one that is most safe from bringing in a rookie flyer. Like he could work well with a rookie flyer if it's like a David Cobb type, and where it's a nice 1-2 combo.
Right, absolutely. He's one you want working with another bigger back. You don't want him having feature carries, He can do damage enough with a smaller role.
Yeah, and so Shane Vereen, he's kind of been polarizing over the last few years, and it's just Bill Belichick is the most frustrating running back usage there is. So what will getting out of New England mean for him, George?
I don't know. I'm a big fan. I like him a lot. I think, his skill set is very unique for the position. It's just tough because it's similar to Darren Sproles or some of those others where they're just trying to find the right situation. Obviously, like a role in New Orleans would be great for him, but I think you could say that for half the free agent running backs. I think he just, again, it's similar to some of these other ones we're talking about. He has to find a great situation because I don't think he's quite as talented as somebody like C.J. Spiller. He's going to be a little bit more situation dependent. So he could easily jump up 20 spots in somebody's rankings in terms of their overall rankings and get drafted 2 rounds sooner if he gets the right situation, or fall back a couple rounds because he just lands in the wrong spot. He lands in San Francisco where, he's a compliment to Hyde, but they barely pass to the running back as it is.
Right. And, I do like Vereen. I think, as you said, if he goes to a place like New Orleans or something like that, then yeah, I would be buying. Like, I think these guys, even like Stephen Ridley, all
Yeah,
these guys, like, I feel like around rookie draft time, they might be falling big time. Because when you infuse those like 30 rookies in there, guys just fall for no reason. So,
I mean,
well,
yeah, it's going
other
to
than
be
you're infusing
February
30
ADP.
rookies.
February ADP will be the first month with the rookies, so it means see where the veterans are going now that you're infusing all those rookies.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
Forsett's out there too, who's another running back, and I mean, anyone who lands in Baltimore, it seems like they seem to plug and play pretty well. So that's
And the
another situation.
Yeah. Wait, what do you think of Forsett?
You going to me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he always was pretty efficient, even when he was, back in Seattle. He just never really got the carries until this year. I just don't know. He's already 29, but he doesn't have a lot of, miles on him. It's kind of tough. I really like him. He's more of a hold for me. I mean, I don't think you can sell him for much. I think a lot of people think he's a flash in the pan. So you just kind of have to hold and hope that he lands in a good spot and you can sell him. Because I wouldn't want to buy him. Let me put it that way. Unless I'm contending right now and he lands in a good spot.
What do you think, Nathan?
See, and that's kind of interesting what you just said about you wouldn't want to buy him. And the thing is that if you wait to buy him and like you're a contender in like week 9 and Forsett is doing exactly what he did last year, he's going to cost you like an early second round pick or something outrageous. So basically, if you think that he can possibly do anything close to the last year, then you have to buy now and not wait until week 6 when veterans are a lot more expensive.
So if we're doing a startup today, where would you guys be looking at in a range of rounds to take him? Not where the ADP would go, but like where you'd feel comfortable taking him. Like 8th round?
No, like probably like between like the 11th and the 13th.
Okay.
Yeah, I might even be slightly later than that, but I'm probably similar to Peak last week, where I'm a little more risk averse. So I tend to slide some of those types of guys down where I feel like there's more uncertainty.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
if he's
makes
going
sense.
10 rounds, unnecessary risk, very little upside long term.
I haven't looked at the ADP. I just assumed since he had a big year that he'd be going higher, but I could be wrong about that.
So you make stuff up, we know.
Yes, pretty much. Yes. You try to get away with it. It's the goal, right? Hey, that's the goal, right? You
That's
make
most
stuff up and then see if you can get away with it. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so Jordan Cameron has kind of been vocal with the whole Cleveland mess that he's not going to be going back. He wants out, and he's going to be a free agent, so he's allowed to go out. What are we thinking of him? I was kind of lower on him the last half of the year to now, just because I'm worried about the concussions. I don't think he's an extremely great talent. I think he's one of those middle of the road tight ends who needs to stay healthy.
I saw a tweet today asking the question, who was more talented between him and Julius Thomas? And I mean, I guess in general, if you just look at them as players, you'd say it's kind of close, but the injury concerns just tip his value over for me, and I'm just, regardless of where he goes, I'm not really going to be a buyer, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Rich Hribar who just put out something about kind of where the peaks and valleys were with different positions, and he showed that tight end kind of falls off a cliff pretty quick in terms of the age. So I mean, add in the injuries to that, and he's already, I think, 26, and Thomas is about the same age, but like add in both of those factors, yeah, I'd be a little bit more down on him. It would take a heck of a situation for me to want to buy him at this point, and even then, it's a short-term rental.
Going to Denver to replace Thomas.
Oh my God, that'd be funny. But like, were either of you Cameron truthers at this time last year? Sort of big into his value.
I mean,
What
I
he
thought
was.
he was tight end 3, but that just means that all the tight ends sucked. Really.
Yeah, true. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, will people that like Cameron previously start buying back into him if he goes to a good spot? You know?
Yeah, and but I guess I kind of think that a lot of people, I can't speak for George, but I think a lot of people were like me, and the landscape after Graham Gronk, it was just so lost, and it's kind of starting to form a little more secure with Kelsey and Julius Thomas. But yeah, essentially, we're starting to get to know a little bit more. George, you kind of see someone like that?
Yeah, I think it's you definitely have the top two, and then there's that clear drop off, and Kelsey honestly is the only young tight end where I'm, pretty high on, and then you have a couple of good veterans like Martellus Bennett and Greg Olson because they're well, in the case of Olson he has no receivers there. I mean, I would love to see Jordan Cameron move to somewhere like Seattle and have like Russell Wilson throwing to him. I think that would be a great situation for him. It would be a much cheaper option.
Him, so.
What's that?
Except Luke Wilson is better than him. So.
Yes.
Well, they barely use any pass catchers, so adding one to the equation might not help.
Yeah.
What's crazy is like you look at the Patriots and Seahawks receiving cores, and like they have to be in the bottom quarter of the league, right?
Except you include Gronk in New England, and it fixes everything.
Yeah, but I mean wide receivers wise. Like, neither team invested at all in wide receivers. And, I mean, Seattle even let their best one go. And they're both Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So how important is a receiver really?
For actual NFL, I can't tell you, but for the Dynasty, it's pretty damn important.
Okay, yeah, we won't get into that today, I guess.
All right, so you did mention Julius Thomas. I'm guessing we're all in a similar boat, and with Cameron and Thomas, that they'll have to go to a pretty decent situation for us to be interested. Maybe Thomas a little less so because he doesn't have the injury concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going back to Denver. I mean, they need to re-sign Demaryius Thomas to a huge deal. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming it's huge. Plus, they have two of their offensive linemen, and they have Brandon Marshall, the linebacker, all to re-sign, which I'd say are all priorities over Thomas. I mean, at that point, Thomas, like, maybe he goes to somewhere like Atlanta or Seattle or somewhere where they need a tight end, maybe St. Louis. I don't know, but I don't think.
Hey! What about Jared Cook? Don't forget about the man, the myth, the legend, the deep threat tight end, Jared Cook.
All right, fine. We'll put Thomas on Arizona, where they can't use him anyways.
Oh, that would be terrible.
I mean, when was the last time they had a decent tight end there anyway? It won't matter.
Yeah, that's true. But I do think he'll get paid by somebody this offseason. I don't know who it is, but his numbers will. I think he'll get paid.
Do you think?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nathan.
Do you think NFL GMs just blindly do that? They just say, "Oh, Julius Thomas caught 12 touchdowns last year. We got to sign him to a $30 million deal."
I think they value actual production. You know what I mean? Like James Jones, he got paid a decent amount for sort of producing in Green Bay. I mean, he's a decent receiver, but
yeah.
I mean, if you put up numbers, I think you'll get at least a contract of some sort.
Yeah, I think he's pretty lucky because there's not really many tight ends in the draft outside of Max Williams. I mean, that's about it. After you go there, I mean, you could argue that half those teams that need a tight end would rather go free agency, with the Julius Thomas or Cameron rather than gamble on a lot of what looks like mediocre tight ends after that.
That's true as well. So he doesn't really have much to compete with.
Yeah, there's no way it's Jason in this draft, guys. No. But yeah, let's talk about the free agent rookie wide receivers, which apparently Cobb was on this list and I didn't see it, so I jumped the gun earlier. But Jeremy Maclin, this is a guy that I've been saying since pretty much we started this hangout, that I think he's incredibly situational dependent right now, and I don't think Philly will find the need to re-sign him. I could be completely wrong about that, but I think that there's a good chance he moves on. Jordan Matthews becomes their number one, and Macklin loses a ton of value by going somewhere other than Philly.
I mean, he definitely played himself into a much bigger contract than if he would have not signed that 1-year deal and signed. I think they offered him a 2 or 3 year deal initially. I mean, it worked out for him, but yeah, I don't know if Philly re-signs him. I mean, they have Riley Cooper signed to a couple more years, which is unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate.
Yeah,
that's really sad, actually.
They drafted Huff. They drafted Matthews. I mean, it kind of seems like they were positioning themselves for life without Macklin, which is similar to what Green Bay was starting to do with Cobb to an extent. And yeah, I agree. He's situational to an extent. I think he'd be okay somewhere else, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who was borderline wide receiver 1 this past year, to probably being more like a borderline wide receiver 2 in a good situation, and probably more like a wide receiver 3 in a normal situation.
Well, we won't get into it today, but a deeper topic, are passing stats going to continue to go this way, or do we think it'll even out? Because, like you said, he wasn't even a high-end wide receiver 1 this year, and he had 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. Is that just the new NFL, or is this going to sort of top out, and is the pendulum actually going to swing back, or is it just going to keep going?
And look at Treadwell, and look at all those guys. It's not just stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the rules in the NFL have kind of just made it so that the passing game is just much more beneficial to most teams than trying to do that power running game. I mean, even the Steelers now are actually passing the ball a lot more than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, it's definitely the favorite to end up going that way. I just wonder if it's possible, because I guess I missed the running game and I'm totally biased and I want it back, but that's my theory for now. But on Macklin, I think he's an underrated talent. I don't think his numbers, even the first 4 years of his career, he never really blew up, over 1,000 yards or anything, but I think he played consistently well. He was battling injuries and other things, but I think he could be a low-end wide receiver 1 on a team. So I think fantasy stats are going to follow him wherever he goes.
The thing that was really weird about Macklin, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing that was weird about Macklin, if you look at how he played with Nick Foles versus how he played with Mark Sanchez, was so different, because he went from being a deep threat with Foles during the first, 6 or 7 games that Foles started, and then he turned into a possession receiver, and then Matthews swung the other way where he was a possession guy and then became their big deep threat. So it's kind of interesting to see how they change with the 2 quarterbacks. So I kind of wonder if he becomes a deep threat on another team, or if he becomes more of a possession guy. Because Deshaun Jackson had the same problem. He was actually more of a possession guy in the year in Kelly's offense. But, I mean, everyone knows he's more of a deep threat overall.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think Macklin's sort of a versatile talent. I think he can do it all. Just he doesn't have any elite qualities to push him into that upper tier. But I'm not mad if he's a wide receiver, a number 1 wide receiver for an NFL team. I think he could do that and be a sort of middle wide receiver 1.
He's not 6'5", Russell, right?
I was dancing around that point, so he'll eventually be benched for no reason and then be out of the NFL, but I think in his 6-foot frame, he can sort of manage together a few 500-yard seasons. And
yeah. Well, another guy who is 6'5" is a guy who I'm actually more of a fan of than Macklin, is Torrey Smith. And I think that he's just so good for Flacco. I think that he'll stay. I have a good feeling about that. A gut feeling.
Ooh, Nathan using his intuitive brain here.
I don't know. I just see. I think that it's a good fit for both sides, and he's not going to be commanding $20 million a year. So, how do you feel about Torrey Smith, George? Do you think he's coming back to Baltimore, or what do you think is going to happen there?
I mean, Baltimore needs him. I mean, Steve Smith's 37 right now, so I mean, he's obviously not young. Their tight end position was a mess. 4 sets of free agent. I mean, they kind of have to keep somebody. So, I mean, why not Torrey Smith, I guess? What's funny about him is that, he's so inconsistent game to game. But when you look at his end of the season numbers, he's consistently a low wide receiver too every year. I think every year he's been between wide receiver 20 and 24.
He's the Joe Flacco of quarterbacks, of wide receivers.
When you phrase it like Torrey Smith in free agency, I'm having a hard time envisioning him on another team. Like you said, I don't know how he would go to another team. It wouldn't compute for me right now. So until further notice, he's still on Baltimore, and I will shift my views once that actually happens. But I don't know. I don't know that his fantasy career. I think it's clearly the best situation in Baltimore. You
don't think he's going to Philly?
No, I mean, I couldn't even picture that right now. That might work out, but hey, for now, he's a Raven.
All right, so on to the man with the 45-year-old knees and ankles, Michael Crabtree. He's now moving away from one of the worst situations for a receiver in San Francisco. It's going to be interesting to see how much he gets paid in free agency, because he really hasn't been the same player since his injuries a couple years ago.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I mean, I remember him coming out, and I think everybody was just super high on him when he first came into the league. I mean, he was such a force in college. And it's tough because on the one hand, he really had just bad quarterback play this year. I mean, I think he still ended up with like over 60 catches. It's just they used him as such a possession receiver and had Stevie Johnson running down the field, and Anquan Bolden kind of was there, and just I mean, it's kind of crazy that he's still doing what he does, but I don't know. I mean, I would buy low on Crabtree because I think he's still young enough. I think he's 27. He's young enough where he could still do something, even with all the injuries. I think he's still got a shot to do something. I don't think he's going to be what everyone expected, though.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see sort of his real ceiling, I think, I mean, if you want to go back to his rookie year, he held out too long, and now he's been nursing injuries the last few years, and it's just like we probably won't ever see his ceiling. But I do think he's a good player. I think he could be a quarterback's best friend in a good situation. And ceiling-wise, wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 2 maybe, something like that.
All right, so I'll do the 4-set question for you guys. What's the range you're looking for Crabtree in a startup?
Yeah, you go first, George.
Oh, man, that's tough. I don't know. I would say probably like mid-teens I'd feel comfortable. I mean, I really don't. I mean, I like him as a buy low, but I would really be buying really low. I mean, I don't trust all those injuries. And, again, I'm pretty risk-averse. And, I think he's had, foot and kind of leg injuries specifically. So, I mean, kind of listening, I remember last week when Scott Peak was talking about Julio Jones and kind of the recurring foot injuries. I mean, now you're talking about a guy who's not nearly as talented as Julio Jones, having kind of some of those similar injuries. I wouldn't go, much higher than maybe the 12th or 13th round.
Yeah.
By the way, pause real quick. This is proof that we do have a listener, guys. George listened last week.
I was pleasantly taking it in without bragging. But we can humble brag now. We can throw some humble brag tweets out there. Yeah, someone does listen. So.
All right. So answer the question, Russell.
What? I would say I would start to look at him around the. See, I like that, even that 10th and 11th round for young guys that haven't done anything yet. So I'm thinking around 12 or 13 but I just have a feeling he's definitely going to be placed higher than that.
Yeah,
Because whether we want to admit it or not, these biases from him being a top 10 pick from years ago still sort of follow him. And there are still people out there that once believed that, and once he goes somewhere, they will sort of fall back into that belief. So I think his ADP will sort of settle in the eighth, ninth round if he gets signed somewhere, you know.
Mm-hmm. All right, so more of a topic for the super flexors, the two QBers of the world. Couple free agent quarterbacks, Jake Locker and Mark Sanchez. Honestly, it's one of those things that if the Eagles re-sign Mark Sanchez, and for some reason, or not for some reason, if they say, okay, he's our guy, then his value absolutely skyrockets. And he even has some QB1 value, or one QB league value. Jake Locker, he's one of those guys that I've always liked, but he's just always hurt. Always. Like he'll show like some sort of like ER.
Hold on. What do you think about renaming Mark Sanchez Sark Manchez?
Oh God.
Like, how do you feel about that? I feel like that goes great with like his little mustache he had for a while.
I don't know what to say. You got any comments on Sark Manchez?
I think that's why you brought me on this week. To answer these kinds of questions. Yes, I like it because the Sanchez obviously was not working for him. So
because he is obviously not a Sanchez quarterback.
No, he needs a rebranding in the worst way. So I'm in favor of it.
All right, cool.
So do you have any real fantasy football thoughts on Locker or Sanchez?
I do not. Maybe George does.
I mean, you know, they were both first-round picks. Obviously, there's some talent there. I mean, and there's enough teams that need a quarterback right now. Not just like a quarterback competition, but a legitimate starting quarterback that I could see either one of those guys getting a chance. I mean, look at the mess in Cleveland. I wouldn't be surprised with Hoyer being a free agent if they chase Locker or Sanchez. I mean, same thing with Buffalo with all the problems with E.J. Manuel. I mean, the Jets could look at someone because Vic's a free agent. I mean, there's enough teams out there where I could see either one of them. Unfortunately, they're the best talents of a bad class, and there's only two rookies that I would say probably are worth, starting in the first year. So, I mean, I could see them getting at least a shot somewhere.
That makes sense, yeah.
Are you saying Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez reunion? Is that what I'm hearing right now?
Ooh. Oh, man. Dude,
yeah, Sanchez and Ryan, I think could work once again.
And he'd be an upgrade for Sammy Watkins, that's for sure.
So, like, what happens with E.J. Manuel now? He basically got just embarrassed this year. They basically just sat him down for a journeyman and said, okay, we'd rather play with this mediocre quarterback than, risk ourselves with you. So, like,
good.
Do you actually think they're going to give him another shot, or, like, is he just benched now?
Well, the only problem is that they traded their 15 first for Watkins. So it's not like they can draft a Winston or a Mariota. And so their best case scenario is maybe trading back into the late first or trading a little higher into the second and getting a Brett Hundley, which, I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but he's still, a viable option in this draft, more so than E.J. Manuel and probably more so than Sanchez or Locker in free agency.
I mean, like, is it fathomable that they cut him? Like, that's not possible, right? They can't cut him yet, can they?
I mean, I'm not sure about any sort of cap restrictions, but I mean, they could if he's just that awful, which I think he is. But
what do you think, George?
I don't think they cut him. I think it's still too soon to cut him, but I don't see them going to rookie. I think they're going to go another veteran. I mean, obviously they did it with Orton, and Rex Ryan, I mean, kind of has a little bit of a history of going after these, like, older type of players. Maybe he goes after Mike Vick. Maybe he brings them along to Buffalo. Who the heck knows? But
there's so much pain and sadness in Buffalo right
but
now.
I mean, yeah, Ryan doesn't care about offense, but I mean, I think he'll bring in some veteran. whether it's Locker or Sanchez or Vic or Hoyer or somebody. I just don't see them trading away more picks to get back into the draft. I think, they're just the commitment they made to Watkins was enough for them probably to avoid doing that. They'd rather probably do a veteran. And, I mean, Watkins had his own regression. I mean, if you look at his first and second half numbers, he was catching, I think, something like 60% of his passes in the first half. I think it was under 50% in the second half. I mean, he just kind of faded pretty hard. And I think that was more of maybe just that transition to the NFL from college. I mean, you see those guys that just aren't used to the schedule. But, yeah, I think a veteran makes sense for them.
Now, you mentioned Fred Jackson getting older earlier. Do you think they draft a running back, or does Bryce Brown potentially have a fantasy-relevant future in Buffalo?
I think they'll probably draft somebody. I don't think it'll be super early, but I think they'll draft someone in the mid-rounds. I mean, the running back class is deep enough. If they could take a shot on someone like Amir Abdullah maybe to replace a C.J. Spiller, somebody like that, that makes sense to me.
What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, Bryce Brown, he entered the league at age 19 or something ridiculous. So I feel like he's been in the league for 10 years. But Bryce Brown, I don't know. He just always seems to be that guy that we're hoping for something to happen, and it's just not going to happen because he's always trying to bust his runs out to the outside. He can't run inside. I don't know. He doesn't really have much fantasy value in my opinion, and I don't think Buffalo can rely on him in any sort of aspect, even to relieve Fred Jackson, who I still think is really good.
All right, I want to do my segment.
What's your segment?
Ready? All right. So, the first installment of Couldn't Care Less Island. Every week I'm going to nominate a player because throughout the process of Dynasty Leagues and sort of ADP and Summer, all these players get brought up and I just don't pay attention to them. And part of that is laziness, and part of that is just 70% of these guys aren't going to be worth anything. So, every week I'm going to add a player. This week, I'm sure you all can guess it. He was a star in the Super Bowl, caught a touchdown or two or whatever he did, and he plays for the Seahawks. Wide receiver Chris Matthews. You are the first one on the island, sir. Huh?
I said, why do you not care about Chris Matthews?
I just don't care.
Do you care about Chris Matthews, George?
I mean, what do you have? I think he had 109 yards. What was it, 4 catches? Something like that in the Super Bowl.
First ever 4 catches.
Yeah. I mean, he was working at a Foot Locker for 3 or 4 years before that. No, I mean, it's real. That's what he was doing before. I mean, before he was, or after he was in the CFL, he was at Foot Locker for 3 years, and then they called him. So, I mean, I don't think there's much there, but I guess, Seattle's wide receiver, just pool is just so terrible. I mean, I'll keep, a very cursory glance at him, but I'm not interested in buying him. Let me put it that way.
So you weren't putting down your beer in the Super Bowl to run to the waiver wire for him?
No, I was not.
So many were, and I was just watching it happen, and I was just saying, yes, take him. He's all yours, folks. And honestly, okay, so I'd say that's about 15% laziness, right?
Yeah.
I'd say that's also about 50% just I've just heard this story before, where some guy has a huge game out of nowhere, and then we're supposed to believe he is something, but he's not. And that's why he's the first one.
All right. So coming off of what DLF was doing today about looking at our top 100s, and George does it with me on there. And one guy I'm seeing that's kind of high is Cody Latimer. compared to some other guys. You have any thoughts on Latimer and maybe the future of Sanders and that core, even with or without Peyton?
I mean, I think of the non-Demaryius Thomas wide receivers, for me at least, he's the next best guy on that team, even including Sanders. I mean, Welker's going to be a free agent. He's going to be gone. So, I mean, at the very least, Latimer's going to move up a spot. I don't think Andre Caldwell's really an answer for him.
I was just going to bring him up. Yeah, bro, but what about Andre Caldwell, dude? And Jacob Tammy?
I mean, what I see next year is going to be Latimer and Demaryius on the outside and Sanders playing the slot. I mean, it makes sense. And if Thomas is gone, I mean, it's that much better for him. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he just didn't get a lot of opportunity there. I mean, I'm buying. Obviously, I'm high on him. I like him a lot. I mean, he's most people going into the season thought a lot of him. I don't think there's any reason to downgrade that opinion just based on the fact he didn't play.
Yeah, no, I mean, much like Christian Michael when he was, not comparing the two, but when Christian Michael was a rookie, we kind of knew, okay, he was going to sit behind Lynch. And we knew Latimer was going to sit behind essentially Julius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders and those guys. So, I mean, yeah, it's not like you can peg him down too much for a lack of rookie stats.
He's another unknown where we're not 100% sure what's going to happen, but I think there's enough potential opportunity there that I kind of like where things could be headed. I didn't buy him last year, so in leagues I'm already in, I don't know that I'd be a buyer, but I'm sort of like not staying away, but he's sort of in the middle for me right now. I'm not like, oh, this is a great value, but I can understand why he would be highly valued by someone,
Mm-hmm. All right, anything else we want to talk about tonight?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
You can go, each of you, how many leagues are you in, and how many do you think is too many?
Okay.
You can go first.
And
I mean like all, like redraft, dynasty, like keeper, whatever.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so MFL 10s I'll probably be doing like 20 to 30 this year at least, depending on if I have a job or not.
So maybe none. So 0 to 30 is...
Well, no, I'm already in one, so... But, anyways, MFL 10s, that'll be about my number. Dynasties right now, I'm in 8, and I'm adding 2 in the next month or so. But 2 of those are best balls, so not as bad in season. And redraft, it's just my home redraft in the fishbowl.
So how many is that total?
For in-season management?
Without the MFL 10s, because those are no maintenance.
Yeah, and neither are the 2 dynasties. But anyway.
But you can count the dynasties. That's
okay. 12.
12?
Yeah, that's much more than I have. This past year I had 3 because I trimmed down pretty significantly. I think Scott Fish said he had 35 at one point and trimmed down to 8 or 9, which I thought even 8 or 9 was a little much, if you do as much as Scott Fish does. But yeah, I have 2 dynasty leagues. I have one redraft league that's a home league that we've done for 12 years. And then I have a home dynasty league, and then I have another dynasty league. One super flex has 2 super flex spots, and then the other one's a little more traditional. And then I'm joining Ryan McDowell's kitchen sink league this off season. Going to do the fishbowl this year. And I'll probably do 1 or 2 others. I mean, I just kind of scaled back with work and everything, and then now I do have a job, so I have to do my.
Yeah, I think I do I don't know, 17 total, I think, this year.
Oh, jeez Louise.
Yeah, which was you need some experience that first year, as you do more, it's like a grind. But like I had done a few before, so it wasn't as bad. But if you're just starting out, I would not suggest like fully investing, like going like 10 leagues your first year. You know, you want to start with like one or two, and then slowly work up. Or I mean, if you have a full schedule and you don't have time to sort of invest in a ton of leagues, just keep it at 2 or 3. You know, it's all pretty much the same. After a while, it's sort of you become numb to the results and you just sort of like watch it happen and are like, all right, well, I won this week, but I don't really care. But sort of just keep it in a range that makes it fun for you. And if you're in too many, don't be afraid to cut back, like George said. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I like to try different leagues. That's the thing I enjoy doing, whether it's Devi or it's IDP or it's Keepers or Dynasty or whatever it is. You know, I try to do, like, even if I only do 3 leagues like I did this year, I like to do a variety of them because I think that kind of makes it more interesting. Because at some point, like you said, you get a little numb to it because you're playing in one league with these guys, but then you're playing against them in 2 other leagues.
Oh yeah, it gets ridiculous after you get over 4 leagues, and you're just like, oh, well, in the 4 o'clock games, I have Marshawn Lynch in these 2 leagues, and I'm playing against him in these 2, and I gotta win by
18, but he can't score 28.
Yeah, I gotta get 2 points there and like 15 here, and it gets pretty ridiculous, but
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
I've learned to like off the phone for at least one slate of games, so I don't look at any scores, and it's just like, okay. Because, like, it's either the 1 o'clock or the 4 o'clock, depending on the day. But it's just like, yeah, you can't be scoreboard watching every Sunday or else you're going to shoot yourself.
And I did that for many years, and this was the first year that I, like, said, okay, Russ, you got to chill. You got to close your computer for a few hours and just relax, because these things are going to fluctuate so much, and you have no control. So
I have all the control, actually. I am the puppet master.
George, I feel like you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, I joined Ryan's league because, you know, there's the Devi component and, you know, obviously some of the auction and different pieces like that. I think that to me is more interesting to kind of try different strategies and do it in different settings versus, like, having 17 leagues, but they all have the same format, you know, which I don't think you do, but, you know, it's just kind of nice to have that kind of break in terms of, like, even if you have different players on each team, having different formats kind of makes the strategy a little more fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Russell and I are actually both in that, too. I hadn't done any of the previous kitchen sinks, but Russell did the first one, so he's going to give us all the hints and clues of how to take down kitchen sink.
Yeah. With our last couple of minutes, Russell, tell us what we need to do.
All right, so you highly invest in running backs, and don't worry about wide receivers. They're not really that important.
Or quarterbacks.
And it's a super flex, which like, yeah, you might need another quarterback, but don't worry about it. Like, let Andrew Luck go. It's fine. Like, if I'm bidding up Andrew Luck, it's just a joke. I'm not actually trying to get him. I'm just trying to push him off on someone else for big salary, you know?
Oh, man. Yeah, that was sarcasm in case anyone...
I just wasted 2 pages of paper for that.
Oh, man.
For those of you that don't know, George is a typist. That's, yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know. I like, personally, of all the leagues I've done in the past and, like, the ones I have, I like the Superflex. I think it's a cool option for anyone who hasn't played.
No, I agree. It's actually, kitchen sink is probably my favorite league, which is crazy. It came about so organically where Ryan was just throwing out ideas one day, and he was like, you know what? We're making a league. And everyone was like, okay. And then it became awesomeness. Huh?
We follow the Ryan.
Yeah, basically.
All right, so let's wrap up this fun madness show with our friend George. George, tell our fans where they can find you on the Twitter and whatnot.
Okay. my Twitter handle is @rotohack, ROTOHACK. And then obviously I work with Nathan and Russell on DLF. And I guess the next couple articles I have coming out, I mentioned, Carlos Hyde. We're doing a little Dynasty debate, Eric Ollinger and I. And then I have a few articles around wide receiver ADOT, the average depth of the target, and then looking at kind of catching efficiency based on that. So a couple of good ones coming out. And then, we all kind of do the Dynasty team capsules, so those are kind of coming out one a day. So I'll have a few of those coming up too.
Nathan, tell everyone why you're looking so suave tonight.
Well, it was my mom's birthday, so we went to Bonefish Grill, had some fish tacos, and then I came back and did a Dynasty Hangout. And as always, you can find me, Nathan Powell, at NPowellFF, and pretty much most of my writing over the next couple months is going to be at DLF exclusively. So, yeah, be sure to check that out. Unless I start writing MFL 10 stuff somewhere, so I'm hiring.
Oh, was that a spoiler alert right there?
I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, where can people find you, Russell?
I'm on Twitter at FFRussellClay. Draft season is here, so I'll be around, doing the thing. But that's pretty much all I got.
All right, thanks for listening to this this show, and thanks, George, for coming on tonight.
And make sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel because we're awesome and handsome and really smart. So that's why you should subscribe and like.
I agree.
All right, guys, we will catch you next week. See you later.